Orrel Glenn Cecil was one of the few young men on board the USS Juneau to see the end of the war in the Pacific. Of the original 700 shipmates, only 14 survived when the Juneau was sunk. Mr. Cecil was one of them.
Well, when we was in the South Pacific, we were being attacked by planes. During the action, the senior medical officer was up on the bridge, and he was passing the word over the speaker system of what was happening topside. He'd say that their planes were coming in on the port side, and everybody below decks had run over to the starboard side to get as far away from it as they could. And it just not a hell of a lot of outstanding stuff. We picked up survivors, and we had to there was a tug that was afire, and we had to go over and help put the fire out. But there's not a hell of a lot. It's just routine stuff when you're at sea. I volunteered, enlisted in 1937. I was 17 when I enlisted, but they wouldn't accept me until I turned 18. And a couple of days after I turned 18, I got a letter to report to the recruiting station in Salt Lake City. Remember about boot camp? Trying to get in a hammock. Boy, I'll tell you, they're hard to get into. And after you get into them, you can't turn over or anything. And they're just a hard deal to get along with. Boot camp was for 12 weeks. After the boot camp, they sent me to the hospital corps school at the Naval Hospital in Balboa Park. And I became an X-ray technician. And that was, let's see, that was, I'd been in 2 years then. And then I was sent to the Fleet Marine Force. They was putting together a medical company. And we went with them to Iceland. My enlistment was expiring, so they sent me back into the States. We got up there in July. My enlistment was expired in December, and they sent me back in October, and I shipped over in November. In the last 12 years I was in the service, I was medical repair, installation and repair of medical equipment. Pearl Harbor, well, when the war started, I had already done a 4-year tour. And I'd shipped over in November, and I was on ship and over leave, or re-enlistment leave, when Pearl Harbor was hit. As to what I was doing, I was deer hunting in the Black Hills, and I didn't know that Pearl Harbor had been hit until we come in that evening. And the next day, I was on my train back to New York to go aboard ship. I think we should have got into it a little earlier, but be that as it may, it took Japan to hit us before we'd do anything. My reaction to the war in Europe, well, you figured it was going to happen, and the sooner you get to it, the better off you was going to be. And yeah, when we finally entered the war, it heightened your interest a lot, because you was actually shooting at somebody now, and they were shooting back at you. I was aware of the internment of Japanese Americans. At first, a little bit teed off, But as months wore on, and we got word that some of these Japanese American boys was enlisting, things kind of softened a bit. But be that as it may, they did a good job during the war after they were in. German atrocities toward the Jews, bad deal. But the Japanese were probably just as bad to us prisoners, to our prisoners. Our boys that were taken prisoner, like the Bataan March. They marched them continuously. They didn't give them a chance to rest, give them feeding anything. Missed most about the United States was the girls. And I didn't resent being in combat when others were not. And the USO is, I think I went to the USO one time. And they did a good job of keeping up morale. A lot of people spent a lot of time there. And they also sent Bob Hope overseas to us. After 19 years and 6 months and 10 days, I was discharged, and I was glad to get out. I had a family and time to move on. I was discharged after the victory, and there was no welcoming home celebrations. Roosevelt and Truman think they've done a good job, the best they could do under the circumstances. Originally, the United Nations was a good deal. But my personal opinion, I think it's outlived its usefulness. Seeing as how the U.S. is probably the only country that is supporting it. We've supported it for years, the main support for it, and pittance from the rest of the world. I'd just as soon see it disbanded. And, well, let's face it, we're in a war now, and the war that we're in has been fought for 2,000 years. It's the same war, and I doubt if it ever ends. To tell you the truth, in my personal opinion. Of course, the Navy nowadays, or the service, all services nowadays are a hell of a lot different than they were then. You got rockets and guided missiles and all that stuff, and the electronics has taken over, computers have taken over. We didn't have that stuff then. We had the radios and we had blinker signals and flags and what have you, but that was it.